Yeah, I mean, so if the issue is limits and bringing things within a process that you have to declare war on a particular country, or that you have to, that there at least needs to be some kind of an establishment of a territorial limit, maybe many territorial limits, if you believe that this is a fight that we should be fighting globally, and imagine and also a process of transparency, making sure the president doesn't abuse it, and that it would be perhaps Angus King from Maine, the senator from Maine, has suggested something along the lines of FISA courts, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act courts, that would provide some of the secrecy and flexibility without sort of providing a blank check. Is that something that you think that civil libertarians and progressives should be open to?
I mean, in terms of the courts, it's they asked, I think, Jamil Jaffer, who works for ACLU, they asked him, I think, on a recent radio program about that, and he's like, yeah, sure, if we can have some more oversight, it's a good idea to have a court. But on the other hand, even if you have a court signing off on it, it's still an extrajudicial killing. I mean, you are targeting a criminal suspect, and you're basically signing their death warrant. You might have a judge overlook that, and that's probably an improvement of what we're doing now, but it's still an extrajudicial killing because terrorists are essentially criminals. I mean, we all think it's different if it's in a war. Like if, the U.S. was at war with North Korea or something, right? And we wanted to deploy drones to fight the North Koreans. No one would probably argue with that. But it's very different when you're targeting individuals who have committed crimes, essentially,
Well,
and you're signing off on their
I mean,
deaths.
just to play the devil's advocate, I mean, the argument is essentially that this is an unconventional war enemy, that these are effectively people that are interested not just in targeting American soldiers, but from what intelligence we could gather, that they are interested in targeting American civilians specifically because of that purpose, and that they violate the laws of war, and they're also not necessarily tied to any particular state. And I guess I'm wondering how we reckon with that. And obviously, there's the far left answer, which is just that, well, you're more likely to slip in the bathtub and then get killed by terrorists, and so the blowback is just not worth it, regardless.
Well,
Um,
I mean, as far as the large last argument, I mean, that's always important to keep in perspective. Is that one, these people really aren't much of a threat to the United States. I mean, but at the same time, like, the government has to respond to every threat, even if it's a tiny threat or if it's a huge threat. So, it's good to keep it perspective of that. But in terms of how the government should respond to them, I would say that, the United States is using more broad force overseas than any other country in the world. And there's like 190 countries or something, and many of them deal with terrorist threats, but they don't respond this way. I mean, the traditional way to respond to this sort of threat is police and intelligence first, meaning like, let's say there's a terrorist in Czechoslovakia, you know, coordinate with their spy agency, get cops there, try to arrest them. And then, if those sorts of things fail, well, your more extreme end of what other countries typically do is like use special forces, right? Like
yeah, no, I mean,
low-grade
it's
targeted
fascinating.
military.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that I personally would be more comfortable with that. I share your genuine fear and skepticism of giving the executive branch this kind of power, particularly, and what the ramifications are for the Constitution. Zed, we're going to have you stick around and talk with us a little bit about Oscar night and what it could mean for awareness of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and specifically the plight of the Palestinians. Stick around after this break. We're talking to Zed Jelani on Take Action.